I'm Doug Jones. I'm chairman of the Falmouth Board of Selectmen, and I have Sue Moran here with me. And we're here to talk to you about some of the issues in front of the town and some of the things that we see moving forward, including a brief discussion about some of the articles we have on the town meeting warrant. Sue, thanks for joining me for this. It'll be great to have this conversation.
Appreciate it. Love being here.
So one of the first things I was hoping we could talk a little briefly about is a few weeks ago we had a joint meeting of 4 of the different boards of the town. We had the Board of Selectmen, the Appeals Board, the Conservation Commission, and the Planning Board.
I think that was the first time that's ever been done, and that was your idea.
Well, it's a push that Doug Brown, one of our fellow selectmen, has been pushing so we can have a discussion about coastal resiliency and exactly what does the town do to be prepared for what we know is eventually happening with the sea rise. How much can we beat Mother Nature at this game, or what can we do to be prepared? And I thought it was a great chance to actually get some of these boards together and talk about what our shared interests are or where we can move forward. Coming from this, we did have a Coastal Resiliency Committee that we hope to be appointing in the next 2 weeks, and charge them to really come up with some action items to push us forward to move forward and do something as opposed to just talking about it.
I agree. I think one of the interesting results of the meeting was, and I think Megan said it best, that we have a lot of studies. Now we want to actually analyze them and make some recommendations for implementation. And part of that is really looking at the town's goals, looking at, do people want Surf Drive to be, to continue in existence, and for that to be protected? At what cost? What is the contingency plan if there is a terrible storm that comes up? What are the insurance issues for homeowners? What are the effects on coastal ponds? So it's something that is a long-term goal, and I agree. I think the quicker we get started on it, the better the planning will be done.
And one thing I know Doug Brown's always pointed out is if we don't have plans in place before a disaster occurs, our only choices are to go back to where we were before. The Conservation Commission regulations say you can rebuild unless you have plans in place. Say if this disaster happens and you have an alternative plan in place, you can then move forward in that direction instead. And
exactly.
That's where I think this committee really should be able to push us to think about all our alternatives that we have. Some of the things that were mentioned were the possibility of building a reef all the way alongside from Knobsco all the way to the Heights to minimize the effect of waves. It's a curious and interesting idea. It could be expensive, but I'm glad we're willing to think about some ideas outside the box. And the town of Falmouth and Woods Hole, if any place can come up with some ideas about what to do to save the shoreline, we can do it.
Exactly, and it's another opportunity to partner with our scientific residents and in Woods Hole to use their expertise to make suggestions to the town. We've got the resources right here. It's a perfect example of an expertise partnership along with outreach to the community.
A second item that came up at this meeting was a discussion with the Collins Center about a community development group and how the town can be looking at ways to improve the services that the town hall provides. And I was a little dismayed that there's so much of the focus of that discussion was what are we doing wrong? And I wanted to also take a chance in this meeting to say a little about what goes right. And starting with the boards and committees we have that are volunteer people who give hours and hours, give their expertise, give their knowledge, and our town government is so dependent upon these committees. And to express appreciation that as an individual and as chairman of the board and as the board as a whole shows for those volunteers. But in addition, the employees of the town hall who are hardworking, really good-hearted people who care deeply about the job they're doing. And I was a little dismayed it came across that they weren't up to snuff or they weren't doing their job or they were, it was a hard place to come to town and get some jobs done.
I agree, and I certainly think that communication in terms of criticism should be reviewed. But sometimes people think about past experiences and they don't give enough energy to new experiences and, changes. I know that when you and I came on the board, one of our main focus issues was the concierge service of the town. In other words, listening to what taxpayers need and then finding out the most expeditious way to implement it. And I think that for my part, I certainly see a renewed commitment for everyone, both the boards as well as the administration and everyone who works in town, to really have the best customer service possible. I mean, there are always new things to work on. There are always ways to get better. But I definitely, feel confident in telling people that's our commitment. And in terms of the community development director, we've taken a long time to talk to people about what that position should be, what kind of community, what kind of development do we want in Falmouth. I know I'm always saying I want to make sure that it works for people who currently live here. I don't want us to make moves and develop so that there's so much traffic no one can move around or get to their jobs. I mean, there's always a plus and minus, and it's something we're taking some time with and carefully moving to effect, and that'll be coming up a couple of new things at town meeting.
One of the things that was stated is that Falmouth is a difficult place to be a builder, to be a contractor. And I think that's because we have a lot of regulations in this town, and I frankly am thankful we have some of those regulations. Some of the proof they're putting in this is this past Sunday, there was a great article in the Boston Globe about a woman who moved back to Falmouth and appreciated how much has been retained here, whether it was the historical nature of some of the houses, whether it was historic Highfield, but so much had been preserved. The town of Falmouth has more coastline than any other town in the Commonwealth. And so we are going to have some coastal regulations more than other places are going to have because we have more property to deal with. And the fact that we're able to keep the town that way, Massachusetts was just voted the best state to live in. And there was an article that showed that Falmouth was one of the best little main streets you could come to in the town in Massachusetts. And that doesn't happen by accident. That happens because we actually put in place some things that make it harder to overdevelop, to change the nature of our villages and our towns. And it may make it harder to build, but it makes things slow down a little bit. The fact we have a demolition bylaw delay allowed us to save Highfield Hall in a way that other towns don't have those restrictions. And I think it can be quite useful. The one thing I also want to add to what you said about communication is I've been so impressed when people communicate to me about a concern they have, whether it's their trash wasn't picked up, a road hadn't been plowed. When I pass that message on to the administration, how quickly I then hear from the homeowner, boy, that was quick, that got taken care of. And it's a plea that we really have to the people of Falmouth. If you have a concern, if you have a need, if you see something, say something. Whether it's your street that needs to be plowed, whether it's your trash being picked up, whether it's issues that happen on our beaches or in our parks, call the police if you have a concern. Let them know. Let the town do its job. Let the people who work for the town do their job. Please don't just stay home and complain about it. Be vocal, take action, and let us help you in any of these issues. And the town would be so much better served that way.
Oh, and the boards are the same way. I mean, the Board of Selectmen really appreciates hearing from folks and, giving us new information, something we may not have considered. A good example of that is the Senior Center. In fact, coming up Monday, we're having a forum to hear more views and to review the plans.
Just a reminder, this Monday from 6 to 7, Selectmen's Meeting Room, it's an open public forum as we move forward on our designs for the Senior Center, being connected to the Gus Canty Center. But we look forward to seeing as many people as interested, or send us emails, communicate with us on your concerns for this Monday night from 6 to 7 p.m.
Absolutely, and we're committed to moving that project forward. And in fact, this is the final outreach effort. We've had a lot of outreach, a lot of meetings, taken a lot of community input, but this will be the last input before the town meeting, and we get some design funds put together to actually start moving on the project. So I think it'll be very important to fine-tune what we're looking at and to really hear thoughts about, whether we have a staged approach or future ideas, all of that. It's all going to be on the table.
Right. And town manager has appointed a working group who's going to actually a very talented group. They have people who've worked in past building projects, people involved with the Council on Aging, who will move the project as we have stepped forward to a more detailed approach to it. And I think it's a very exciting project. It's been a long time coming, but I'm really happy that it's finally moving in that direction. And I like the timing of it also, because it is a project that started quite a while ago, as did our two other big projects that have happened. We have the water filtration plant and the wastewater in the Little Pond Sewer Service area, which were also projects 30 years ago and are going to wrap up.
Right, state of the art. And the amazing thing is, how many projects of that magnitude, both of them, came in essentially right at budget.
Yep. And on time.
Really amazing. I mean, our staff it really deserves tremendous kudos, and the fact that we had monthly reports and tours. There were, students had tours. I think maybe you led a couple of those.
My chemistry class had a great tour of the water filtration plant. It's an exciting. It is. I mean, what they're doing there, the step-by-step process they have of being able to treat that water. Our town water. I don't think legally we can do this, but I think we should consider bottling Falmouth town water and selling it to other communities, because our town water will be more regulated and cleaner than most of the purchased spring water you can buy either from Poland Springs or any of these other places.
And there's a direct economic effect to that, because when you have a community that has clean water and it really disperses throughout the town and kind of mixes with other water sources, but that holds up property values. I mean, people want to not only live in a community that has great, ecological assets and historical assets, but healthy living, and clean water is foundational to that. So I really appreciate the prior board pushing that, and our board really, leading it to the finish.
And as people think about the town of Falmouth and what the town provides, it would be a good idea for them to realize the full-service community that we are. I think there's only one other town that has curbside trash pickup. No other town can really compare, I think, with our school systems that we have. The Falmouth Public School System is top-notch in every level. The other services that we provide, whether it's for the seniors, our Veterans Council is the place that many other veterans from other towns come to seek guidance from our people. And we really take pride in the different kind of services we can offer.
And one of the reasons we can do that is because we really have an amazing, eclectic, talented group of volunteers on our committees, and on our volunteer committees, on our appointed and our elected committees. We really, this is, kind of the hot spot for, professional expertise, scientific expertise of all kinds.
And it may not always come across that way, but we also, I think, benefit from the critical people. From the people who critique every single thing we do, keep us focused and say, are you looking out for this? Are you watching out for the effect of what my dollar is doing and how my money gets spent? And knowing that we always have people looking over our shoulder, keeping on that, I think helps us do our job even better.
Keeps us on our toes, and also really trains you, I think, to look at things a different way. Because you might, have a general plan in mind or an initial focus, and there'll be someone that comes along with, well, did you look at it this way? And our board always says, well, no, but we will, and we do.
Along those lines, getting us ready for the town meeting warrant, I think one of the petition articles we have, Article 13, I think will probably be the most hotly debated article we have. This is the article that has been put forward by David Haddad and Mark Finneran to look into whether the regulations put forward by the Conservation Commission, and these are regulations, whether they need to be endorsed by town meeting.
Right.
I thought we had, in our board meeting this past Monday, it was an interesting discussion. And one of the things that I've noticed about our board is how rarely does it seem that our board members come in with an issue decided. So often we have points of view, we have ideas, we have thoughts, and the debate actually frames what our decision is going to be.
And there's movement. Sometimes it goes back and forth. And we also go into town meeting that way. We, in fact, that was part of the reason why none of us were that enamored of the high school, because we put, we'll put things before town
You
meeting.
mean having the meeting up at the high school?
Right, but we will put things before town meeting, to really get a sense of what the voters think. And, it might be something that perhaps the majority of us might not think is the best idea, but through the discussion and the collaboration or voicing of opinions at town meeting, we learn a lot. And things could happen that you never would have expected.
So another big project we have for the town to deal with is the decision of the Andrews family to sell the Andrews farm and the property around it. I'm looking forward to seeing how the town responds to the request of the 300 committee. They're going to be making their proposal also on Monday night. With the board, we haven't discussed it, so we don't know exactly what our recommendation will be on it. But I know, speaking as an individual and someone who spent years picking strawberries at Tony Andrews' farm, I certainly hope it's something that we can keep in this town. The idea of agriculture in the town, a working farm in town, I hope we can keep. One of my favorite stories at Tony Andrews' farm is my parents and some friends of ours. I think we were about 8 or 9 of us picking strawberries one morning, and you get there good and early. You get the best strawberries, but there were so many of them we were filling up our baskets. And at some point, our friend Norm Matson yelled to my dad, I think we have enough. And my dad said, "You're right, start putting some back."
That's a great story. I'm sure a lot of people in Falmouth have similar stories, which is why it's such an important issue. And I appreciate the fact that the town and the 300 committee saw the opportunity to bring the potential of this idea before the town. And I understand that the presentation is going to include really a pieces and partnerships or cooperation of different financing possibilities. So, it'll be really interesting to see that presentation.
And there'll be pieces that we hope that the CPC may be able to play a part in it. I know that there's an opportunity for the land grant that we often get from the state to be able to help with the funding. So as you hear about the project, I hope everyone realizes it isn't going to be directly coming out of everyone's pocket, but that there'll be a financial package that's put forth that makes it reasonable and a good purchase.
Absolutely. We've done a lot of projects. The Communications Center, for example, is something that took some time to come to fruition, and it's running.
Yep. When you and I visited it, it was remarkable how much it did remind us all of the Star Trek Communication Center and the deck.
Absolutely. No, it's definitely state of the art. And as time goes on, and I know that there was initial training that's already been completed, but I'm sure there are things there's potential there for communication that that's going to make a lot of departments more efficient going forward.
About 3 weeks ago, the town manager and I were part of the Citizens Academy, in which we had a chance to talk about the role of the Board of Selectmen and town meeting and the town manager. And I had a chance to express my view about town meeting. I am so enamored by it as a form of government. The town meeting is a chance, even in a representative town meeting, for people to get involved at the grassroots level. That they get a chance to, if they're representative, to vote. If they're not a representative, but they are resident, anybody can speak who's a resident on any issue that's before the town meeting, and you can get involved. And it's actually the way I've dealt with any despair I've had about larger politics, is encourage people, if you really care, if you're really worried about things, get involved.
Oh, exactly. People may not have the time day to day to know every, change in the issue until it's presented. But once that town meeting book comes out and the town meeting members go through it with a fine-tooth comb, they prepare, they talk to people, they do their own research. They let everyone in their precinct know, come ask me a question. I mean, you can find all of the names and contact information right on the town website. Which reminds me, the town website is about to get unveiled as well. So that's another project where the strategic planning goal of the Selectmen of communication again comes into play.
Actually, I asked Mr. Sousa about this 2 days ago. He says it's actually ready to go, but this website's going to require a lot more training of each department so it can be more interactive. And so they're trying to get the departments really that they're trained and can update it on a daily basis. And they don't want to launch it until all the departments are at the same level of being able to, okay, every single day something new has come forward, they can put the new piece of information on the website so people can get the most current, most accurate information. And so it is just about there. We don't have a deadline as to when it's going to happen. But as you were saying about the town meeting members are listed on the website, through the efforts of our moderator, David Vieira, and Michael Palmer, our clerk, the precinct meetings before town meeting have really become a much more effective tool for getting more information out, getting the questions to the town meeting members and to the administration so that when we have town meeting, I think we're having a much more efficient covering the bases town meeting. I know there are some people who've been frustrated watching the debate on town meeting that will spend an hour debating an issue and then have a unanimous vote. But we've had the debate.
Right.
We've had the discussion. Clearly there are people who weren't on that side, on the unanimous side beforehand. But if through the means of debate and discussion, we can convince everybody it's the right thing to decide, I think that's fantastic.
And that's the money that's being spent. It's the taxpayers' money. And I think that when there is that kind of communication and outreach, people feel better about projects. And I don't know if everyone at home knows that the selectmen and staff all sort of divvy up the precinct meetings so that we can be sure that there will be someone at the precinct meeting who is knowledgeable and can answer a question if you attend and you have a question. And if we can't, we'll go find out. And a lot of times, I know that's been instructive to the board about certain things we may not have considered and that should get some more attention.
People also often ask me, what have I been surprised about as being a member of the Board of Selectmen? And very little of the job surprised me. What did surprise me, what I didn't know, was the amount of effort that went into creating our budget every year and how long the process is. That it doesn't happen a month before town meeting. That it starts first with the manager coming up with a suggested budget presentation or budget philosophy for the Board of Selectmen to vote on. Once that's voted on, then that gets sent out to the departments so they can come up with their individual budget, which then gets reviewed by our finance director, which then gets recommended back to us, which we then recommend to the finance committee, who then takes another look on a very, very minute level at each spending of it.
Yeah.
And then they make their recommendation, and then town meeting has a chance to then go over it again. And it is where I do get sometimes dismayed at town meeting when people said, did you even look into why it was going to cost this? Like 5 or 6 times we looked at that. And people did look at things very carefully. And some things can fall through the cracks that way. But in general, I think it's looked at very, very carefully. And again, always by people meaning well, doing their best, doing what they think is best for the town, with people who care deeply about the town that they've either grown up with or grown to love because they've moved here.
Absolutely, and really taking in suggestions and implementing it with the next round. And in fact, the town manager and finance director just came out with a very specialized report that only 10% of the communities in Falmouth, I understand, have, and I'm blanking on the name,
CAFR.
CAFR, which, the interesting thing for me, we work well together because you're more of a math brain. Being a lawyer, I'm kind of more about the word. But even for someone who's less of a math brain, it was very understandable. Talked a lot about the history of the town, a lot about why we do what we do, definitions. I really suggest that, for people that, want some more detailed information about, for example, budgetary decisions, take a look at it. It's going to be on the website when it's launched. In fact, it probably is already on the website, I believe Jennifer may have said. Very interesting piece of work. Big commitment on the part of the town. It was the town manager's initiative, which the board agreed with. And, the discussion at the board when it was presented is we might not do it every year, but it's terrific to have, and I think it will put Falmouth in even a better place in terms of getting financing, which we have for our water projects. We were cutting edge on the state in terms of getting, zero interest deals and legislation that was put in, which is the Falmouth model for folks all across the state to do water projects. So it's along that kind of thinking.
I remember about 6 or 7 years ago when the whole idea of having a finance director came forward initially, and this was a new thing. You know, we had always had a volunteer finance committee, a finance committee chair who worked countless hours, more hours than any volunteer should put forward, and relied on having some people in that position who knew finances, could do it well. Gary Anderson being a fantastic example of someone.
Jim
he-
Vieira,
right,
yeah, a couple of people.
that the town couldn't have worked without, but we couldn't rely on always being able to get that kind of a volunteer.
Right.
Volunteers, I think, just don't have the kind of hours that they used to. And so it was a bit of a transition. It was a political debate whether this is the way to go. And I hope most people see how well it has worked. I think we've been quite fortunate that the finance director we hired, Jennifer Petit, was the one we hired because she does such a good job of getting us. She's a quite conservative, fiscally conservative. She does not want to raise any increases on budgets. She wants to keep the money held tightly.
Tax rate right even. I like that.
And that we have increased the amount of money that we've put aside in all the different funds that we have, so that we're ready when we need to. But it just put the town in a very, very strong fiscal state very soon after the financial collapse. That we recovered faster than many, many towns because of the financial management that we had.
We sprang into action. Absolutely right.
And I think that we're going to be very well served and be able to move forward on some of these projects, for instance, like the senior center, without the individual feeling it in their pocketbook or in their wallet.
That's what we hope. Sure.
And so I think it's going to be a very, very positive thing. So are there any other articles that you think are going to be major points of discussion at the town meeting? We'll have both the annual town meeting on April 3rd and a special town meeting on April 4th.
Well, I think we should kind of at least mention the marijuana question.
Okay. So there are two articles dealing with marijuana. One of them I think is a little more straightforward, and that's an article that the Board of Health, this is Article 11, has asked us to put forward to define the illegalities of synthetic marijuana.
Right.
And but the other one is asking the town to put a prohibition on recreational marijuana being sold in the town of Falmouth. And it is still a law that is newly on the books. We're not sure exactly what the ramifications of that. How do you think that's going to go in this town?
You know, it's interesting because I do a lot of regional work. I'm on the Assembly of Delegates. I'm the president of the Cape Selectmen's Association. And the questions that have been raised really have a lot to do with what kind of community are you? And I think the Cape in general, and particularly Falmouth, being a recreational, vacation, seasonal community, we have a lot of influx of tourism and a lot of influx of folks who come here, you know, on a short-term basis. And so I think that's that's one of the reasons that we have to be very careful about, you know, the issue of marijuana recreationally. And I also think that, you know, our Senator DiMacedo did a lot of the legwork out in Colorado when he heard that, you know, there are a lot of issues that the communities weren't prepared for, and he really recommended kind of a wait and see. Let other folks make the mistakes. Let's learn from the way they correct them. So I guess that would be my prediction. But it's a complicated issue.
Well, it's an interesting call that the medicinal marijuana law in Falmouth passed.
Right.
But recreational did not.
Right.
And that it was about 60-40, I think, one way, and then 40-60 the other way. And that it'll be, I think, an interesting debate to see how the town feels on this. Just for people to understand the logistics, the Board of Selectmen have put this article on the town meeting warrant as to whether the town meeting wants us to put an article on the town election, a referendum.
For the ballot.
For the ballot question. I think it's likely that we're going to go ahead with that. It is actually technically a decision of the Board of Selectmen to put ballot questions on it. I think we'd be very reluctant to not follow the advice of town meeting, but it is our decision. And I think it's likely there will be a question on the ballot for the townspeople across the town to be able to vote on.
Absolutely. And, you know, another important issue is the vacation home tax.
Right. And this is a part of the special town meeting that we've finally heard that the state legislature may be willing to. I think we've 2 or 3 times town meeting has voted in favor of asking a special legislation to be passed, and it's never gotten out of committee.
Right.
But we've heard that this year's a chance that it actually might get out of committee, and so again, we'll have that article in the special town meeting to see if town meeting wants to request it again.
Sarah Peak, Representative Sarah Peak has been working very hard at this issue, and it's something that could potentially benefit all communities to really keep our heads above water in terms of state mandates and our our infrastructure maintenance. There are a lot of possibilities. Whether those funds maybe get earmarked toward housing is another issue at the state level. So it's a very interesting meeting coming up.
Right. Well, I appreciate you coming to spend some time talking to me about this. This is a show we hope to do 4 or 5 times a year, and look forward to seeing people at our precinct meetings, Board of Selectmen meeting. Again, our meeting on this Monday from 6 to 7 on the Senior Center. And get us some questions, and we'll be happy to talk about the topics.
Come and be heard and participate as a volunteer in some of the committees. We're going to be having that as a focus coming forward.
Great. All right. Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Doug.